Amy Acton ramps up her campaign for governor. And where do trans rights go from here? Welcome to Columbus on the Record. I'm Mike Thompson. The Democrats' only candidate for governor is out with her first campaign ad. It's a digital ad designed to reintroduce Amy Acton to Ohio voters. It immediately begins with Acton tying her Republican rival Vivek Ramaswamy to Elon Musk, describing them as chaos-causing, self-serving billionaires. Then it takes a softer turn, telling her Youngstown origin story and reminding voters of her role during the COVID pandemic, including having the top Ohio Republican endorse her work.
So when the most unprecedented public health crisis of our lives hit, I thought about saving lives, not politics.
It's true not all heroes wear capes. Some of them do, in fact, wear a white coat. And this particular hero's white coat is embossed with the name Dr. Amy Acton.
Julie Carr-Smythe using Mike DeWine as her chief cheerleader in her first ad. That's a bit unusual.
It is, but as we talk about on this program, right now we have sort of this schism within the Republican Party, a huge surge of support for Vivek Ramaswamy so early. And I think that her take is, I worked for Mike DeWine. We are a state where maybe moderate Republicans don't feel like they have a place to go. And so she's going to take a little bit of a gamble there.
She's portraying herself, Terry, as the champion for struggling Ohioans against special interests and lobbyists, nonpartisan. What do you make of her introductory video?
Well, the big thing is, other than people tuning in right now, seeing a few seconds of it, it isn't on television because it's 2 minutes and 40 seconds. It's a nice way to try and get some free publicity. But Tim Ryan in 22, Sherrod Brown last year, trying to show you're close to somebody in the other party of Trump, as they did, or in this case DeWine. I'm not sure whether it helps you ultimately get anywhere. And she offered no real solutions what she wants to do as governor. How is she going to pay for more money for schools? How is she going to fund the other things that she's promising and saying she'll do?
That likely will come in future ads and as the campaign progresses. This was the first ad, Morgan. By using Mike DeWine so prominently in this ad, does that annoy Democrats?
I think it's possible, but more likely, just picking up on something that Terry said, I mean, the path to victory here is probably going to be with really running up the numbers with the Democratic base. That's key, increasing turnout. In Franklin County, we saw really low turnout this past November. That was part of the reason why Sherrod Brown wasn't able to ultimately prevail. And there is a lane for persuasion, but I'm just not sure it's with traditional Republicans. I think it's more likely to be independents. Independents are quite anti-establishment these days. And so, yes, saying that you're going to go after special interests is a start, but I think there's room to be a lot more aggressive with that messaging and really naming the villains that we're talking about there.
You know, watching the video and knowing Amy Acton and how she was during the COVID pandemic, she goes after Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk, and right away it's her voice, and I don't think it's tough enough. You know, I mean, if she needs to probably use those other men and women who make these ads and make these negative ads, right?
Well, I've been out talking to voters, when I go cover a protest and whatnot, and they're telling me that they're mad. And so I think they're looking for a Democrat who's ready to take it to them. And they don't want this compromise stuff. So you might have a point there.
Does she come across as mad in this? She doesn't come across. It's optimistic,
no.
It's hopeful, it's not mad at all.
No, I don't think mad doesn't necessarily, I've never seen her mad. Have you?
I was about to say, I think Amy Acton's brand is going to be kinder, gentler. This is what people need. We all need to go to therapy, and we need to... we need to be comforted by a lot of people, and she's going to be like this comforter chief kind of vibe, and you get that from the first interviews when she first launched, but you see it here as well. That just it's not her thing, and it's a gamble, but this is a very uncertain political time.
This is a very divided political time, Terry. Does kinder, gentler work?
Well, it is very divided, but they expect the governor to kind of not just be comforter in chief, but also somebody that runs the place, keeps the highways clear, the prisons running, all the other things happening. But I might also mention What's irrelevant about this video, there's really an audience of one. One man, one vote, it's Sherrod Brown. Until he decides what he's doing or not doing, all the people around her are primarily Sherrod people. So it's nice to see that. Nice she's got a little video, but until Sherrod Brown decides what he's doing or not doing, it doesn't mean anything.
But she's out with the ad now. We are now less than a year away from the primary, Morgan. Is she just going ahead with this campaign and not waiting for Sherrod Brown? Obviously, she announced before Sherrod made his decision, and now she's saying, okay, I'm raising money, I'm going to all these dinners. Now I'm out with an ad. I'm a serious candidate for governor.
Look, I definitely think that Amy Acton is trying to run a real campaign here to put herself forward as the Democratic nominee for Ohio governor. Whether or not that will remain if Sherrod Brown decides that he wants to be the Democratic nominee for Ohio governor, I am skeptical. I think that's going to be really tough for her to stay. I mean, maybe there's a switch and she shifts to lieutenant governor, who knows? But Sherrod Brown is still very much in charge of Ohio Democratic politics right now, and his word is going to carry a lot in what he decides he wants to do.
We've seen a lot of debate within both parties in the state over whether to endorse in primaries, whether to avoid primaries. And, there's sort of been a consensus around the fact that some competition at the primary level can be good for a party because you get a chance to kind of get yourself out there and be debating. Otherwise, you get zero headlines until the general because nobody's covering you.
Yeah, you're not tested as much either. You're not debating your opponents in the primary. You can make mistakes. It's a bit of a risk there. But you're not, Vivek Ramaswamy is not going to have to debate anybody really until the general.
Right.
Tim Ryan, any word? He says he's considering it, waiting to see what Sherrod Brown does.
He's said that for years and years on lots of different offices, and he's got a tangle within his own Democrat Party. When you're lobbyists for the natural gas people and the Bitcoin people, does that really sell with a lot part of the Democrat base?
They might sell with independents, though.
It's possible. But look, whoever the Democratic nominee is, I think the point remains that Vivek Ramaswamy is going to have, to your point, a clear lane here. And even though there's some vulnerability with things like his association with Elon Musk is out of the administration. He's been able to build his brand of a national brand in running for president that is anti-establishment, that is kind of independent, that is a business guy. And that's what we have to be taking on. And I do think it's going to require a much more anti-establishment message. And it's tough for establishment people to authentically convey an anti-establishment message.
Is Amy Acton establishment? She was the health director for, what,
But
a
she
year and a half.
associated herself with Mike DeWine that epitomizes the establishment. And the other thing is, this past week, the chairman of the Democrat National Committee was in Ohio saying how important Ohio is, but where's the money? Unless you're going to show the money and really put some commitment into Ohio. And then there was also Chuck Schumer having dinner last Friday night, supposedly with Sherrod Brown in the short north. So we'll see what Chuck Schumer promised him to run for the Senate.
Right, and you remember that Tim Ryan, begged for DNC money at the end of that campaign, which was one of the better campaigns we've seen in, decades on the Democratic side, and he got pretty close, but he didn't have the money.
But also money for what? And if it's going to be money that's going into ads that have been saying the same thing over a year, that's one use of money. If it's going to be money that's serious about building up the base on the ground and doing real grassroots organizing, that's another lane for that money. And that's a lane that we have not authentically explored in some time and that people are desperate to plug into.
Okay. Ohio's system of collecting property taxes is complicated. It includes the terms appraised value, assessed value, mills, millage rate, inside millage, outside millage, permanent levies, replacement levies, renewal levies. It is mind-numbing. But here's what's not complicated. Property taxes have skyrocketed by nearly 25% the past few years, and experts predict they will go even higher because of rising property values. As a result, property owners demand state lawmakers do something about it. But if they do, local governments, in particular school districts, could get less money than they expected. Joe Ingles, I don't want to get into the weeds on this.
I don't either.
It's very complicated, but this latest proposal targets the portion of your tax bill that the local government can raise on their own. They don't have to go to voters. that's what lawmakers are targeting now.
Yes, that's what they're targeting now. There are several different ideas in the legislature right now, and they're the ones that are in the budget at this point in the conference committee. They are dealing with schools basically, and the overages that they can carry on their budget. And if it gets above 50%, then they have to give a rebate back to taxpayers, and is a whole complicated thing. But the bottom line is that none of these are being widely embraced by people on all sides of the aisle as that's the idea, that's what we want. And we're not seeing any kind of alternative being floated that people really like.
They're tinkering, Julie. Is it because the system is so complicated and your property tax bill includes so many different entities, schools, fire, the zoo, developmental disability organizations?
Well, I think, yes, they're struggling with something that's going to be the ultimate solution. And I think part of the problem is that they're using the budget to try to get some money and relief and do the money piece. And then they've got these other bills that are separately moving that are trying to actually fix a system that a lot of people feel like is in desperate need of sort of a systemic overhaul. And so I was thinking as we were preparing for the show that, the problem with school funding keeps on rearing its head because there isn't one big fix, and they're sort of like, well, we're going to cancel this and then start this. And so the messaging and the ultimate goal of it can be political nightmare for people if they vote the wrong way.
So do lawmakers come up with some kind of plan that will lead to a reduction in property taxes?
Well, I talked yesterday to State Representative Dave Thomas from Ashtabula, who's a former county auditor who really understands these issues. And there's some elements in that bill that might get passed, but conquering and solving all of inside millage is very challenging. It's a steep hill to climb because Ohio's got such a diversity. Another state representative pointed out the problem if you've got small rural counties without much of a tax base. Yes, you've got here in central Ohio some rich counties with a lot of people willing to vote on higher things. So it's going to take more time. This problem wasn't created overnight, and it's going to take some while. And then let's throw in also tax abatements, because if you talk to the school people, a lot of the tax abatements are given out like candy, and that ultimately costs the average homeowner, small business people, apartment owners more money to make up for what's given away in a tax abatement.
The bottom line is, Morgan, is the reason why property tax bills have gone up because property values have gone up. But when property taxes go up, that money goes somewhere. And local governments are complaining that if you change it, we're going to lose money. But they've been making more money over the past 4 or 5 years, right?
Yeah, but I also think we have to look at making money from whom. I mean, we hosted a community event last week where property tax was one of the issues that came up from a lot of seniors, saying, how is it fair that I'm at this stage of my life, I'm on a fixed income, but there's this expense that will just keep going and going and going because they happen to live in a county that, to your point, is growing and these properties are more valuable. We're at a breaking point, and we're talking about generational loss of wealth, and that doesn't seem fair, and I think a lot more people recognize it.
Actually, Mike, there is a break in the law, House Bill 920, that forces a reduction factor as values go up. But again, that's where we get into the exception of inside millage, which we are not to explain here and don't want to put people to sleep.
Inside millage, reduction factors. Julie, we're not the first state. Every state's going through this right now because it's 25% across the country. This is not the first time property taxes have been lightning rod issues. What makes this one so different?
Well, I think because I think our 920 was in the 1970s, right? Yes. And so there is a faction of pretty smart people out there that are trying to fix this, and now they have to convince enough people at the legislature to take the political hit, to do a negative thing that's going to hurt some people in the short term, and make their case that this is better in the long term. But my point on school funding is you can lose some of the goodwill if you're doing things like underfunding the school funding formula and also telling school districts that they have to they have to give back a piece of their reserve, et cetera, et cetera. So you're kind of doing all these things at one time while you're trying to build the votes.
And go ahead, Joe.
You know, I want to kind of highlight one thing. We were talking about school districts being different. The ones that are growing fast, Olentangy is one of the fastest growing in the state. According to their treasurer, they get about $800, $900 per kid from the state. But they actually pay about $16,000 per kid to educate those kids. So where does that money come from? The bulk of it comes from local taxpayers. So he points out that the vouchers, those are about $8,000 for some of those, and those go to private schools, kids who go to private schools. He doesn't feel that it's fair, especially to growing school districts who have no way to control the growth, because you can't tell a developer they can't put family homes in. So he doesn't think it's fair that the state comes in and says, oh, we're not paying you anything, and by the way, you've got all these other issues out here. It makes it difficult.
Yeah, and then we have the possibility of a voter issue repealing all property taxes. That's coming up perhaps next year anyway.
Difficult.
The breaking news in the plan to use tax money to build pro sports stadiums is that other teams beside the Browns want in too. Executives from 14 Ohio pro sports teams wrote a letter to Governor DeWine and legislative leaders. It urges them to use money in the state's unclaimed funds account to support stadium and arena construction. Those signing the letter include executives from the Cleveland Guardians, Cincinnati Reds, the Blue Jackets, the Clippers, and the Toledo Walleye Hockey Club. Owners cite economic benefits that teams bring to the state. The letter does not disclose the net worth of the teams or the owners themselves. Terry Casey, the Los Angeles Lakers this week announced they're being sold for $10 billion. How does that headline affect this debate?
Well, I might also add to the list of people who might eventually want to ride this gravy train. There's a professional team in Ohio that actually won a national championship called the Buckeyes. They might need improvements for more luxury boxes in Ohio Stadium. There's a great golf tournament in Central Ohio at Muirfield. Maybe they should be entitled because they draw lots of people. It's very debatable, the benefits of pro sports, particularly with the NFL, when they only play about 8 home games a year, unlike baseball or basketball. So there's a lot of pro and con debates, but my sense is if you're the governor, you're a key legislative leader, you don't want to answer to people on why your town lost an NFL team, because there's lots of towns out there that would love to have the Bengals or the Browns move there.
Yeah, the letter says that Ohio has the most Major League pro sports teams per capita of any state. Might be Colorado, but we'll let that go anyway. Julie, is this going to pass in some form?
Well, I mean, it's the asset of the Senate version of the funding plan is that the governor wanted to raise taxes, the House wanted to use bonds, and this is something that looks like free money to people, and so they think that they can do this. I mean, can they do it on an ongoing basis? Who knows? Because once people start realizing, oh, unclaimed funds are available, what? You know, and I think already there's been a little bit of a rush on that fund to people saying, you know, I didn't know I had unclaimed funds, because they really aren't everybody's tax dollars.
It's really the state is borrowing from itself because they, by Constitution, I think, they can't drain this account and refuse to give people their unclaimed funds even years, decades later, right, Morgan?
Yeah, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. I think it's pretty obvious. So if this does go through, it's really just another sign from our legislature that they're going to give away to those that probably don't need it. I mean, I do acknowledge the distinction between the owners of the Browns and then some of the community teams of, you know, more minor league teams and things like that. But increasingly with something like the Browns, I mean, these aren't always very accessible events anymore. They can be quite expensive. So in addition to the owners themselves who have a lot of resources, they're catering to a certain slice of the community. So that argument about how, you know, sports are a key part of being in Ohio, and we all love sports, but are we all able to access them in the same way?
Yeah, and you know, one thing I'm hearing a lot from a lot of different people right now is that they're wondering how the state can be so creative and find funding for the Browns when they can't find funding for the public schools. And I'm hearing that every time I go out at a rally, everywhere I go, I hear a lot of people saying that. Yeah. So I think that also plays in the background when you're thinking about this.
But the state of Ohio has been dipping into the unclaimed fund money anyway, because they've been taking off the top interest money and putting it in the general fund. So this is not something unheard of, but it is creative, and it is, right or wrong, easier to skim money out of things for one-time money to build something versus something that's year after year after year. So,
Because after this request is done, the pro sports teams will never ask for money again, of course.
but they'll want a bigger scoreboard, and that'll cost millions more.
Anyway, our final topic, on a more serious note, transgender rights suffered a significant setback this week when the U.S. Supreme Court upheld Tennessee's ban on treatments for minors. Ohio has a similar ban. Top state officials say the Supreme Court ruling solidifies Ohio's ban on hormone therapy and puberty blockers for minors. The ACLU, which is challenging Ohio's ban, says it still violates the Ohio Constitution, and that lawsuit continues. Morgan Harper, where do transgender rights stand after this week's ruling?
I think it's an open question, and a lot of the coverage of the Supreme Court's decision was interesting and revealing, honestly, that we have transgender Congressperson Sarah McBride saying that there needs to be a wider tent with the party on this issue in particular, and just how much influence perhaps organizations that are affiliated with the Democratic Party, though operating separately, might have had over party politics. And so I think this issue is not going away. Why? Because the Republicans have found that it offers a very strong political advantage to them to continue to keep it in the public narrative, even if it's not the first, second, or third issue that people would bring up on their own. It's politically advantageous for them to keep talking about it, and so we need to have a better strategy here.
The New York Times this Sunday in their magazine section has a very comprehensive article that basically says the ACLU and others rolled the dice, hoping they'd be on a winning streak with the Supreme Court. Instead, they lost. And in reality, it probably sets the thing back. But that article really details a lot of the division within medical and professional people as far as what works, and also cites polling, even with Democrats, who are not as supportive of certain of these medical treatments being done to minors. So there's some big issues as far as what happens or not with adults versus what happens with children.
Julie, there are a lot of questions about transgender care for minors and whether even the hormone and puberty blockers has long-term side effects and whether they work or not. But they're passing laws to regulate medicine. This treatment should be illegal. I mean, even bloodletting is not illegal right now, but we don't do it anymore for the most part. We donate blood, which could be considered bloodletting, but shouldn't this be left to doctors in the medical society, the experts, rather than the courts and even the lawmakers?
Well, I mean, Morgan hit on it. It's very effective to use in ads and in politicking, and so that's part of it, is the idea that that transgender people can be turned into sort of these punching bags for people running for office. And I think we all know the statistics of what a small fraction of people this is we're talking about. And you're right. People generally are able to choose their own kind of health care, particularly for their children in an era of really parents' rights. Others would say there are certain things that we don't allow. We have laws against, tanning beds and other things like that seem to be societally harmful. So they've done that here and there.
Go ahead, Morgan.
Well, and I was just going to add, and I don't think this has to be as tricky as some of the political pundits might make it out to be. Is we don't have to throw people under the bus. We as Democrats believe in people being able to live fulfilling lives and the lives that they define for themselves and be free. And a big part of that is not just focusing on transgender people. It's actually taking on the large corporations in this country that are the ones that are more or less preventing that. Let's keep it simple. And I think there's a lot of, there has been a tendency over the last couple of years, because of how strong this has been for Republicans, to give in to a lot of their arguments. But we need to have our own definition of what's right here and just stick to it.
Joe, the ACLU claims that the Ohio Constitution offers more protections, more equal protections than the U.S. Constitution. Do you see the Ohio Supreme Court, as it's constituted now, ruling this trans ban for minors, illegal?
Well, let's just put it this way. Republicans dominate the Ohio Supreme Court now. The people who are on the Ohio Supreme Court, with the exception of one justice, have been pretty conservative. So I don't want to say what the court would do, but that's the makeup of the court. But the other thing you got to realize is in 2023, Ohioans, 57% of voters passed that reproductive rights amendment that's in the Constitution. And that's what the ACLU is saying. Hey, look at this. This protects transgender rights. So So, you know, there might be some way to hang the hat on there. I don't know. It's going to depend on the court.
We shall see. Let's get to our final off-the-record parting shots. Morgan Harper, you're up first.
Just wishing everybody a happy Juneteenth weekend. Lots of good community events going on around town, and hopefully we'll see people out at those.
All right, stay cool.
Yeah.
This week, HBO came out with a nearly 2-hour-long special about OSU and Dr. Strauss. And also this week, Judge Mike Watson called the parties back in because OSU is lost in their efforts at the Sixth Circuit and the U.S. Supreme Court to get stopped. So, and at the end of the thing, they put up the money that Penn State had paid out and Michigan State paid out versus what Ohio State paid out. So Ohio State's probably going to have to pay out more. How much is part of what the debate and what the judge is going to have to figure out.
Julie.
I was just wanting to remind people that the HB6 scandal is not over. And we're in the midst of a 3-week trial of sorts at the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio. Next Monday, the former CEO of First Energy has been compelled to testify after trying to, plead the fifth or, get out of it. And that'll be on Monday. Steve Straw will talk about, what he knew when. So that'll be interesting.
And Joe.
The Department of Commerce, who oversees those unclaimed funds, they said they saw the claimees, the people wanting to claim them, that skyrocketed after they introduced this idea of using those funds for sports stadiums. There are a lot of Ohioans out there who have unclaimed funds. Some of them are hard to get, depending on the paperwork you need. So people should go look at that and see if they have money and get it before it gets taken.
All right, the pro sports owners say Ohio has the most major league teams per capita of any state. Colorado may have a case there. So I looked up how many championships per capita Ohio has. They're not number one. That's Wisconsin, thanks to the Green Bay Packers. But Ohio doesn't do too bad. But most of our championships in Ohio were won like in the 1940s and 1950s. So there you go. That is Columbus on the Record for this week. Check us out online. Continue the conversation on Facebook. And watch us anytime at our website, YouTube, and the PBS app. For our crew and panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.